At 0647 on June 6, 1944, Commander Samuel Dealey stood in the cramped conning tower of USS Harder, watching 3 Japanese destroyers slice through the moonlit waters off Tawi Tawi, closing in with deadly precision. At 37 years old, with 5 war patrols and 18 enemy ships destroyed, Dealey had earned a reputation that made him a prime target. The Imperial Japanese Navy had dispatched Minazuki, Hayanami, and Tanikaze with one mission: eliminate the American submarine that had been crippling their supply lines for 3 weeks. Until April 1944, submarines avoided destroyers entirely. The destroyers could make 35 knots, while a submerged sub barely reached 9. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had sunk 14 American submarines, none of which had ever taken a destroyer down in a direct engagement. Commander Dealey changed that on April 13. When Ikuzuchi charged Harder's position at full speed, everyone expected him to dive. Instead, Dealey ordered a head-on attack. At 900 yards, he fired 4 torpedoes. 2 hit amidships, and the destroyer exploded, sinking in 5 minutes. His report to command became legendary: expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. Admiral Soimu Toyota, however, was not amused. By May 1944, Japan had lost 23 destroyers, crippling Operation Ago, which required perfect timing to defend the Philippines. To protect his fleet, Toyota concentrated Japan's naval might at Tawi Tawi: 4 battleships including Yamato, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, and 28 destroyers, the largest naval force since Midway. But American codebreakers already knew. Admiral Charles Lockwood sent Harder to patrol the area and strike targets of opportunity. For 9 days, Dealey remained undetected until June 6 at 0300, when a Japanese patrol plane spotted his periscope wake. 3 destroyers responded instantly. Through the periscope, Dealey studied the lead ship, Minazuki, closing fast and zigzagging. Behind her, 2 more destroyers spread out to trap Harder in a kill zone. Dealey turned his bow straight toward Minazuki. Range, 1,100 yards. Time to collision, 96 seconds. Every man aboard knew what "down the throat" meant: fire torpedoes straight into an oncoming destroyer and dive beneath her keel. Miss, and they'd be crushed by depth charges. Dive too late, and they'd be rammed. At 750 yards, Dealey fired 3 torpedoes and ordered Harder down to 300 feet. 2 explosions followed, then a third that lifted the submarine's stern. When Dealey rose to periscope depth, Minazuki was gone, broken in half and sinking. The remaining destroyers fled, dropping depth charges aimlessly. Furious, Toyota ordered 6 more destroyers to hunt Harder. By noon, patrol planes searched every 20 minutes. But Dealey wasn't done. On June 7, at 0230, Harder surfaced to recharge batteries. It was a moonless, cloudy night, perfect for attack. At 0312, radar detected a fast-moving ship destroyer, Hayanami, commanded by Hideo Kaboki, who was returning to base, exhausted. Kaboki never expected a submarine on the surface. Dealey ordered full speed to close in undetected. At 3,000 yards, Kaboki realized too late what he faced. Dealey fired 4 torpedoes. 2 struck near the aft magazine, blowing Hayanami apart. She rolled and sank stern first, taking 148 sailors with her. 2 destroyers down in 24 hours. Toyota's rage grew. He organized 8 destroyers into hunter-killer groups with one mission: destroy Harder. But Dealey went hunting again. On June 8, near Sabuto Passage, he spotted Tanikaze and an escort destroyer zigzagging at 25 knots. For 90 minutes, he tracked their movements and waited for the perfect shot. At 1,200 yards, Dealey fired 4 torpedoes. 2 hit Tanikaze, one striking near the bridge, the other the forward magazine. The explosion was so violent that Harder's crew heard it underwater. Tanikaze broke apart and sank within minutes. The escort counterattacked furiously, dropping depth charges, but Harder survived. 3 destroyers in 3 days. On June 9, Dealey found 4 more destroyers sweeping for submarines. With only 8 torpedoes left, he picked the second ship in line as his target. At 1,800 yards, he fired 3 torpedoes, all hit. The destroyer erupted in a massive explosion and vanished beneath the sea in seconds. The others pounded harder with depth charges, but after 2 hours, they gave up. 4 destroyers in 4 days, a record unmatched in submarine warfare, but success came at a cost. Harder had burned through 60% of her fuel and had only days left before needing to retreat to Fremantle. Meanwhile, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commander of Japan's mobile fleet at Tawi Tawi, received reports of the losses. 4 destroyers gone to 1 submarine. If an American boat could penetrate his defenses so easily, the entire fleet was in danger. He sent an urgent warning to Toyota. They had to move immediately. The Japanese fleet departed 6 days earlier than planned without proper scouting, supply lines, or destroyer screens, setting the stage for their catastrophic defeat at the Battle of the Philippine Sea, with an American submarine stalking his destroyers, remaining at Tawi. Tawi was suicide. On June 10, 1944, at 0800 hours, the Japanese mobile fleet finally departed for battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, and 24 destroyers steaming northeast toward the Philippine Sea. Within hours, American codebreakers intercepted their orders. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet, quickly adjusted his plans. That early departure gave the U.S. Navy a full extra day to position its carriers for what would soon become the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Commander Dealey, aboard Harder, knew none of this. That same afternoon, at 1630, he spotted 2 Japanese destroyers patrolling north of Cebuto Passage, both moving fast and executing aggressive search patterns. Dealey had only 5 torpedoes left, enough for one last attack. At 1715, he fired 3 at the lead destroyer. One struck near the bow, crippling but not sinking her. The second destroyer immediately charged Harder's position. Dealey fired his last 2 torpedoes, both missed. Now defenseless, with the destroyer bearing down at 32 knots, he ordered an emergency dive. The submarine plunged sharply 300 feet for 100, then 500 as the destroyer roared overhead, her propellers thundering through the water. Then came silence. Dealey knew what that meant. The destroyer was turning for another run, ready to drop depth charges again and again. Harder was forced to surface or crushed. At 1723, the first pattern of 6 depth charges detonated close around Harder, rolling the submarine 15 degrees to starboard and shattering light bulbs. 2 minutes later, another pattern exploded even closer, lifting the stern and slamming it down again. Dust and cork insulation filled the control room air as a hydraulic line burst, spraying fluid across the deck. For an hour and a half, the destroyer hunted Harder, dropping 42 depth charges. Most detonated too shallow or too far away, but a few came close enough to crack gauges and cause minor leaks. Dealey held the boat at 500 feet, creeping silently at 2 knots. Finally, by 1900 hours, the destroyer withdrew out of depth charges. An hour later, Harder surfaced to find the ocean empty. No ships, no planes, only darkness and the rhythmic hum of diesel engines recharging batteries. Low on fuel, Dealey set a slow course for Fremantle, arriving on June 26 after a grueling 17-day patrol. Waiting at the pier was Admiral Charles Lockwood, who had tracked Harder's radio reports. 5 destroyers attacked, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged. In 12 days, Harder had achieved the most successful anti-destroyer patrol in submarine history. Lockwood awarded Dealey the Navy Cross on the spot, then asked the question every sub-commander dreaded, "Can you do it again?" Dealey's reply was immediate, "Give me torpedoes, and I'll sink 10. Through July, Harder underwent repairs and resupply at Fremantle. Dealey trained new crewmen in his daring, down-the-throat attack tactics, and by the end of the month, every submarine commander in the Pacific had studied Harder's reports. The tactic worked. Between June and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of Dealey's method. On August 5, Harder departed Fremantle for her 6th War Patrol as part of a 3-submarine wolfpack with USS Harder and USS Hake, under Dealey's command. Their mission: patrol west of Luzon and strike Japanese shipping bound for the Philippines. The patrol began brilliantly. On August 21 Street, the wolfpack intercepted a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay, sinking 4 cargo ships totaling 22,000 tons. The next day, Harder and Harder attacked 3 coastal defense ships near Bataan. All 3 went down, with Harder credited for destroying the frigates Matsuo and Hibori. By August 23, Harder was out of torpedoes and withdrew, leaving Harder and Hake to patrol off Daesel Bay. But Japanese intelligence had been listening. They intercepted radio traffic between the wolfpack and pinpointed their position. At 0453 on August 24, USS Hake, submerged 4 miles off Hermanamayor Island, spotted Harder on the surface through her periscope. Both submarines were preparing to attack a crippled destroyer left from the previous day's strike when Hake's sonar operator detected something chilling, echo ranging close and closing fast. 2 Japanese escorts, CD-22 and PB-102, were approaching Harder's position at 18 knots, conducting active sonar sweeps. They had been hunting American submarines for 3 days. Hake's captain ordered a silent dive, watching as the Japanese ships converged on Harder. At 0520, Hake tried to warn Dealey by radio. No response. Either Harder's radio was off, or she was already diving. At 0530, Harder crash dived too late. The Japanese ships were within 2,000 yards. As she descended at a steep 35-degree angle, Harder's diesel engines left a massive trail of bubbles that revealed her exact position. CD-22E's sonar operator locked on range 1,200 yards, depth 200 feet, and ordered an immediate depth charge run. At 0547, CD-22 dropped a full pattern of depth charges, set for 250 feet. The explosions bracketed Harder perfectly. At least 3 detonated within 50 feet of her hull. The aft compartments flooded instantly, forcing the submarine into a steep nose-up angle. Dealey ordered all ballast blown, but the flooding was too severe. Harder could not surface. At 0552, CD-22 made a second run, the charges exploding even closer. The blasts ruptured Harder's main pressure hull and knocked out all electrical power. Emergency lights flickered, then went black. At over 600 feet beyond her maximum safe depth, the hull began to collapse. Bulkheads crumpled, compartments imploded, and within 3 minutes, USS Harder was gone. At 0600, CD-22 and PB-102 reported a confirmed kill. Oil, debris, and cork floated to the surface as the destroyers circled for 2 hours, dropping more charges to be certain. There were no survivors. All 79 men aboard, including Commander Samuel Dealey and radioman Calvin Bull, who had earned the Bronze Star for June's victories, were lost with their boat. USS Hake remained submerged until nightfall, then sent a contact report describing Harder's destruction. Admiral Lockwood received it at 0800 on August 25 and immediately suspended all submarine operations in the Daesel Bay area. The news reached Washington in early September. The Navy declared USS Harder lost with all hands, but the details remained classified until after the war. The Japanese, however, knew. On August 26, Admiral Toyota received confirmation the submarine that had terrorized his destroyers for months was finally gone. He ordered commendations for CD-22's crew. What he didn't know was that Dealey's 4 furious days in June had already altered the course of history. Because of Harder's attacks, Japan's fleet sailed early into the trap that became the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the decisive clash that ended Japan's naval power in the Pacific. 9 days after Harder sank her 4th destroyer off Tawi Tawi, Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet clashed with Admiral Spruance's 5th Fleet in what became the largest carrier battle in history. 15 American carriers faced 9 Japanese carriers, 900 American aircraft against 430 Japanese planes. The battle raged for 2 days, and by the end, U.S. pilots had shot down 376 Japanese aircraft while losing only 30 of their own. It became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers Tai, Shikaku, and He were sunk, along with a cruiser and 2 damaged battleships. The Imperial Japanese Navy lost 75% of its carrier airgroups and never recovered. Yet the outcome might have been very different if Admiral Ozawa had arrived on schedule. His plan originally called for the mobile fleet to leave Tawi Tawi on June 15, giving him 4 days to locate the American fleet before the battle began. His forces would have been fully supplied, properly organized, and coordinated with land-based aircraft from the Philippines. But Harder's attacks forced Ozawa to depart 6 days early. When he reached the Philippine Sea on June 14, his fleet was scattered across 200 miles of ocean. Reconnaissance aircraft had already burned through much of their fuel and couldn't effectively search. His destroyers were still regrouping after anti-submarine patrols, and supply ships lagged 3 days behind. So when American carrier aircraft discovered Ozawa's fleet on June 19, his carriers were still launching planes. His air patrol was undermanned, his formation disorganized, and his battle plan in ruins. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot happened because Ozawa wasn't ready, and he wasn't ready because Commander Dealey and Harder had sunk 4 destroyers in 4 days, convincing Japan that Tawi Tawi was too dangerous. Admiral Charles Lockwood recognized this immediately, later writing that Harder's 5th Patrol was the most strategically important submarine operation of the Pacific War. 4 destroyers sunk meant 4 fewer escorts for Japan's carriers. But forcing the fleet to sail early meant its entire battle plan collapsed before a single shot was fired. Between December 1941 and August 1944, U.S. submarines sank 1,314 Japanese ships, over 5.3 million tons, but only 29 were warships. Most captains avoided them. They were fast, well-armed, and deadly. Dealey proved submarines could hunt warships successfully. His down-the-throat tactic worked because it shattered every assumption Japanese destroyer captains had. Submarines weren't supposed to charge, they were supposed to flee. When Harder charged instead, captains hesitated for 12 seconds, long enough for torpedoes to hit. By war's end, U.S. submarines using Dealey's tactics had sunk 214 Japanese warships, including 4 carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers, and 38 destroyers. Japan began the war with 63 destroyers and built 49 more. American submarines sank 38 of them. Harder alone accounted for 4 in 4 days. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman presented Commander Samuel Dealey's Medal of Honor to his widow, Edwina Dealey, on the White House lawn. The citation praised his valiant fighting spirit and 5 vital destroyers sunk in 5 short-range torpedo attacks. The Navy later commissioned the destroyer escort USS Dealey in 1954. She served until 1972. Harder received the Presidential Unit Citation for her first 5 patrols and 6 battle stars for her service. Her motto, "Hit 'em harder," became legendary across the submarine fleet. But her true legacy was the tactical revolution she inspired. Before Harder's 5th Patrol, U.S. submarine doctrine emphasized stealth. If detected, you dove deep and prayed. Engaging destroyers was suicide. Dealey changed that math by realizing destroyer captains expected subs to run. Charging forced them to decide instantly with incomplete information as torpedoes closed at 46 knots. Most chose wrong. Between June and December 1944, 12 submarines adopted Dealey's aggressive tactics. Tang sank 2 destroyers. Trigger 1, Barb sank 1 and damaged another. Flasher destroyed 3 escort ships. The success rate was 63%. For every 5 attacks, 3 destroyers were sunk and 1 damaged. But by late 1944, Japanese captains learned to adapt, turning away, slowing to avoid torpedoes, or forcing subs to expose their sides. Success dropped to 40%, and losses rose. 9 American submarines were lost between August and December 1944, including Tang and Harder. Even so, Wood chose to continue the aggressive doctrine. Between January and August 1945, U.S. submarines sank 437 Japanese merchant ships and 53 warships. By August, Japan had lost 75% of its merchant tonnage. The island starved, factories shut down, and ships were stranded for lack of fuel. Dealey never saw that victory. He died 3 months after his greatest success, killed by the same type of escort ship he'd spent a year learning to destroy. But his methods live on. Every U.S. submarine commander studied Harder's reports. Every attack plan included down-the-throat calculations. 80 years later, on May 22, 2024, Tim Taylor's Lost 52 project discovered Harder's wreck in the South China Sea upright at 3,750 feet, 12 miles west of Daesel Bay. Her pressure hull remains intact, except for depth charge damage near the conning tower. The site is now a protected war grave, resting place for all 79 men who changed naval warfare forever. At the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, instructors still teach Dealey's down-the-throat attack, not because modern submarines use it, but because it demonstrates a timeless truth. When your enemy expects you to run, charging can change everything. Harder's patrol logs, radio messages, and firing reports are preserved at the Naval History and Heritage Command. They reveal a commander who learned constantly, refined his tactics, and never stopped adapting. Dealey's grave rests in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 59, Grave 874. His stone bears his rank, his dates of service, and one line, Medal of Honor Destroyer Killer. Each August 24th, families of Harder's crew visit to place flowers and share stories of fathers, brothers, and sons who died young farm boys, factory workers, college graduates. All-knowing submariners had the highest casualty rate of any branch, 22%. Calvin Bull, the radio man who earned a Bronze Star, was 24. John Moe, who survived and later became an admiral, told their story until his death in 2010. The last survivor, Paul Bryce, died in 2022 at 98. No one who served aboard Harder lives to tell the tale firsthand. That's why these stories matter. Official records tell us Harder sank 4 destroyers in 4 days, but they can't capture the fear, the exhaustion, or the courage it took to dive headfirst into death. Remembering them keeps their story alive and ensures Commander Dealey and his 79 men never disappear into silence.